To start off, my name is Parker Rogers. I'm the data community advocate here at Census, and I will be hosting this webinar. And we will be hearing from Ankush, who is our head of product, and he's going to teach us about CDP versus Reverse ETL. So a little bit of the ground rules. If you guys have any questions, add them to the LinkedIn chat. Looks like a lot of people are doing that already. If the question applies to what we're talking about during Ankush's conversation, then we'll address it right then and there. And if not, we'll send it in an email after the webinar. And also, the webinar is being recorded, so if you have to dip, we'll send it right to you. All right, Ankush, you're up.
Awesome, thanks, Parker. Hi, everybody. As Parker said, my name is Ankush, the head of product here. I'm going to be going through more of like an educational session for this. So talking about CDP, talking about reverse ETL and some of the differences and the deltas. The main thing in terms of the relevancy of my background here, I've kind of like worn a lot of different hats in my career. I started my career in marketing. I eventually, worked on some growth things. I also worked at one of the CDPs, Treasure Data. And then at New Relic, I built a data and a growth team. And so I've had a lot of experience kind of on these different sides of the fence. All right. So you might have context on some of these kind of players within the CDP landscape. There's Segment, who got acquired by Twilio, Treasure Data I mentioned, Kaz and Hero, if you ever watched this webinar, hey, Bloomreach and RudderStack. So I'm going to start with Gartner's definition of the CDP landscape. Packaged software that creates a persistent unified customer database that is accessible to other systems. The CDP is packaged software bought and controlled by business users, most often in marketing. This distinguishes it from data warehouse or data lakes, which is usually custom built by the corporate IT department. The CDP creates a comprehensive view of each customer by capturing data from multiple systems, linking information related to the same customer, and storing the information to track behavior over time. The key call out for this and the context is CDP was really born out of the marketing and advertising needs, right? What that means is that all of these companies basically really invested heavily in a couple different areas. They invested very heavily in marketing and advertising integrations. They heavily invested in their user experience, catering to marketers. And ultimately, this is like why they've had a lot of traction with various subsets from the marketing. It could be for Segment, it could be something like the marketing team, no longer using tag managers, or for like something like Bloomreach, it might be e-commerce, or RudderStack is trying to also focus on developers in their own way. So again, it's just the main thing that this is really supporting marketing and advertising needs, and that's really what that drove the CDP market to the place it is today. So how do CDPs work? This is from Treasure Data, the alma mater. So there's really, just a very high level architecture here that I'll walk through. First is collecting all your first party data. So the very first portion is collecting all of your customer experience data from a couple different sources. This would be first party data that you're tracking around your mobile applications. This could be also your websites and your SaaS applications, your e-commerce apps, your media apps, and then you have IoT. You might have wearables and device technology that has a heartbeat, and it's a source of big data. And so this is really your data, right? This is your data about your customers. That then, eventually gets streamed in and goes into the unification process. So here it goes into like a multi-tenant SaaS architecture. This is normally for all the CDPs hosted on the cloud. It's multi-tenant, which means that you're sharing the same cloud with all the other customers in terms of the data that they're storing about the customers. The only reason I call this out is, especially in like large commercial enterprise like level companies or public companies or highly regulated industries, this can be a concern, right? They want to have single tenant. That's part of their security and AppSec review process, things like that. The second and the third party DMPs or data management providers, they will do enrichment. In like the B2B world, think of like ZoomInfo. In the B2C world, there's a bunch of these data aggregators effectively that you can use to enrich, other data sources through exchanges. And then the third major thing is creating your audiences and your cohorts. So now that you have unified your customer data profiles, you have it all in the same place, you can then create really interesting audiences. A lot of times this is things like lookalike audiences where you have a cohort of users and you want to find other people that are like this. Maybe they're high converting, maybe they have high checkout value or have high potential spend, whatever characteristics about those people that you have, you want to find more. And the other thing is starting to organize the journey a bit, right? So you want to be able to orchestrate the journey of touch points, whether it's an email, an ads, retargeting, even like digital billboards, right? You can think about account-based marketing. Those things all like end up occurring as you analyze and create your audiences and kind of map out the journey of the customer experience. And lastly is doing the actual stuff, actually activating the data, right? And so a lot of times, these tools will then, have some downstream integration into the long tail of marketing and advertising integrations to activate the data and actually make it touch your customer's experience. So customer data platforms, some of the pros and the cons that I've seen, and again, this is like less of me as a guy that's trying to sell or market to you, just like from my experience with CDPs. It's really built for marketing and it's point and click. This is like one of the biggest, I think, benefits. This provides self-service to marketing. These products were built for them. The designers, that were thinking about this were like, how do we take something, that's more technical and how do we really make it easy to use for your marketing team? It has the features that these marketers need. This can be targeting. This can be segmentation if they want to build their own custom segments. Personalization, if you want to dynamically personalize content in email, web, ads based off of data, you can do that. And then, like I said, lookalike, which is when you are adding additional data and you want to target that based on something you already know about your customers. And then ultimately profile unification, right? Creating these, the buzzword is 360-degree customer profiles, whatever. But the idea is that there's a bunch of anonymous activity, there's a bunch of known activity about your customers, and you want to, resolve that and get to a unified profile. Can you get a full picture of what they're doing in your mobile app, what they're doing in your website? Did they attend an event? Do they have support tickets? Anything like that. You want to have all of that data stitched together and unified, and there you get a comprehensive record for your customers, and you can activate that data in your channels. Doesn't serve other departments' needs. So just generally, like you saw it in the Gartner definition, it's just not really meant for anyone else. Segment and other people have tried to position and message to product and engineering and support and these other use cases, but really the main users and the main buyers and the main budget always come from marketing. Vendor lock-in, since they have the data. So your third party, a third party has your source of truth on your customers. And again, this might be fine. If you're a small company, it doesn't really matter. You're not that worried about this. But when you get into public company range, highly regulated industries, or just a large enterprise, this might be a concern for your InfoSec, AppSec, your chief privacy officer, your CISO. And that's basically the last point. You have your data in a third party. So this can cause just operational issues. We're going to talk about two different personas and kind of walk through a narrative here. So first is Data Daisy. The assumption here is Data Daisy is either kind of a leader or a practitioner on the data team for her company. And her team basically created a new definition of activated users. Like there's maybe some new logic that they added to their query or a new data point that they want to use to define what activated means. So, and she really wants everyone in this company to use this trusted definition that she has worked on, right? And then there's Marky Mark, who's in the marketing team, and he wants to test a new retargeting social ads campaign, right? Let's say they want to try out retargeting ads on Facebook and Instagram. He actually has the old definition and the old data logic from last year. And so now, Daisy is concerned. She's like, hey, is everyone using this new kind of blessed, logic and definition? I want to make sure. And this is kind of where things break down between the warehouse and the modern data stack in some cases, and where the marketers are within CDP land and the advertising tools. And ultimately, our position at Census is we believe in the cloud data warehouse era. The CDP is basically having it, putting your customer 360 in their environment. And we believe that should really stay within your first party data warehouse, like the first party owned data warehouse. And this could be Databricks, BigQuery, Snowflake, GCP, Azure, whatever it is, but like ultimately having that data in a central place. And so that's the first point here is we think of it more like the corporate 360. How do you have every single business object that your team cares about in a singular place? You know, at New Relic, when I was managing the data team, this was like a really important thing. We really wanted to have every single department's data in a central place, manage security and governance centrally, and working with our IT and security teams to make sure that that was done well. But the main point was that if we really wanted to be a data platform team for all of the 3,000 employees as a 20-person team, we had to have everything centralized. From here, then it's a lot easier to, using the tools like Census in the reverse ETL category to enrich any app. CDP could be an app that we enrich, but it could also be like any of the things that you see on the right here: Salesforce, Gainsight, Anaplan, Shopify. Secure by design. So the main thing here is that we run off of the warehouse. If your Redshift or Snowflake or GCP is running off a virtual private cloud, we run there. We don't store anything if you don't want us to. We even allow you to bring your own S3 bucket if you want to have the temp storage as we move the data from your warehouse to Salesforce. You can even bring your own bucket. We are working right now on bringing your own Google Cloud storage bucket. That's like in a month or less delivery. But basically the point here is we have a store nothing architecture, and Brad, my chief architect, is very, very strict with me and the other product guys on no compromise on security, no compromise on compliance as being his one of his fundamental principles with how we build Census. And trusted models. Your data team, if you're fortunate to have one, is really the ones that are going through and really understanding the data, making sure it's as clean as possible, that the logic is right. And this becomes your source of truth, right? And you can then rely on the data team to make sure that the source of truth is valid, is updated, and is ready to use, consistent, reliable, all those good things. And so just to back up a little bit, on this thing, really this is about just cloud data warehousing beginning to really take a swing and gain adoption within the broader market. So just two Gartner data points here. So for last year, there was 70 billion in data analytics spend, which is a 14% year-over-year increase, right? And so a lot of times you hear tech companies at New Relic talk about digital transformation. This is definitely part of that. As people are modernizing onto three themes: big data, SaaS, and cloud. We're seeing that people are moving into this new kind of world. But it's barely been adopted yet. 66% of the data warehouse spend is still on premise. These are the big providers that existed in the 80s and the 90s. They still have wallet share. That just means basically Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, Azure. They're just getting started, right? Even with their crazy growth, their crazy valuations. It's just, we're just at the tip of the iceberg with a lot more room for their growth. And that's where we think we fit in. If we are anchoring ourselves off the amount of potential that these major cloud data warehouse providers have, we think that data teams lead the world with operational analytics. And what operational analytics really means is that people have the trusted data that they actually want to use exactly in the tool where they do their daily work. And that's really our flag. That's our main concept that we really want to drive here at Census in terms of how we think about the value of what we're providing. Reverse ETL is more like the technology, I would say. It is a pipeline that moves something from point A to point B, but the value and the solution that we're providing is operational analytics, and it's really about how you act on the data. So just a note on the people process side, right? So this was like kind of the old world. Before at New Relic, before I took over, there was like the central data team where they wanted to house everyone's analytics resources, and it was a pay-to-play model, and you had to give this director of data money to get your reports, basically, or headcount dollars, I would say. And so this is kind of like a waterfall, not very agile model. And then we have kind of the new model here, right? Which is the data team is actually a platform team, and they're delivering data as a product to various stakeholders throughout the business. the main thing here is that like they're building applications and they're thinking about them as products. And they deliver little apps. 3 apps that we built at New Relic on the data team were Event Analytics Governance, PLG CRM, and Customer Health, right? And these were mini apps that provided self-service, allowed us to scale, allowed us a 20-person team to serve like 3,000 people. And the last point I'll make here is, what's the shift mimicking? It's mimicking the transformation that happened in engineering with DevOps. What we're beginning to see is we're beginning to see data organizations look at their engineering partners and say, hey, the practices, the policies, and the principles that you were running on are actually relevant, and we can apply them to data teams. And again, at least in terms of my personal experience, that's the only way we had like a 100x scale impact to the business with a small but mighty data team. But ultimately, I think the point I'm trying to make here is these tools are better together. I've used both of them, and ultimately I see a lot of value in using both of them, but it does require a couple of steps, I think is what I'm going to try to say here. One does not simply build the modern data stack. It takes a little bit of work, it takes a little bit of thinking, and there is a sequencing to it. So I'm going to walk through that. Oops, sorry. Wrong slide. That's my bad. Census enables everyone to take action. I already said that. And so this is Daisy and Mark, right? This is just the self-service point, is providing Mark with trusted data. She builds self-service, which I also talked about on the last slide. And then he wants to make sure he uses approved database tools moving forward. Reverse ETL pros and cons. So yeah, so we're based in the cloud. We talked about that. It's based off of your corporate source of truth. It's optimized to mark with your data stack. And it's built for modern data teams. So I'll also talk about that a bit on the people process slide. And like I was saying, you have to already have your data centralized. You have to already have trusted models, and we just don't have the breadth of marketing capabilities in this category yet. This is starting to get developed by us and our peers, but by no means do we have, personalization capabilities, lookalike capabilities that are native. These are all to be developed by the entire category as a whole. And so now this was the slide I was trying to get to when I messed up, but we're all better together, right? So you first need to ingest all of your sources. What that means is you need to find a provider. We're big fans of Fivetran, high Fivetran people. And you have to ingest all of your data sources, right? This is not just the objects that you might sync in from Salesforce, Gainsight, Marketo, your MySQL product database. This is also the events. So that would be events that are getting tracked by analytics.js and Segment, or Snowplow, if you have Snowplow events and you want to use Snowplow. That's really important in terms of ingesting all of the right pieces of data across everything about your business. Then you need to pick your warehouse. If you're a Microsoft shop, you're probably going to go with Azure. If you want to, figure out whether Snowflake, BigQuery makes sense for you, that's basically this part of the decision-making process. You have to figure out which warehouse makes the most sense for your business. Modeling, facts and dimensions about your business. We're big fans of DBT over here. So yeah, you need a modeling tool. We work, you can work with Looker and Looker models, you can work with DBT. You can even just like do this manually and create your own, materialized views on your own if you would like, to have data marks basically that are then your source of truth models, and serve that up to the business, whether that's in a BI tool or that's in Reverse ETL. And so it's really important. This is a critical step in the process of taking raw, unfiltered, unclean data and getting to facts and dimensions about your business that are clean and then can be used in downstream reporting or further aggregation and analytics. Reverse ETL. So this is where Census and our peers fit in. Sync and enrich all of your apps. And this includes CDP. So in a theory, you could, send all of the data directly to Facebook ads, Instagram ads, whatever, but then you would lose out on marketing having a tool that has already the full feature set and the user experience that they're used to. And even if this is something, Reverse ETL as a category is trying to build, it's not there yet. It's in its nascent stages. So that's why we partner. So we have a partnership with Segment.io, for example. And they're a destination that we sync into, and we'll talk about a use case with them on the next slide. And so then you're in your CDP, right? So you get the data, you have, let's say your data coming from the product or the e-commerce app, you have the data coming from your business apps and your internal apps and marketing support apps, whatever it is, create some models, and then you're able to sync it into the CDP. And the CDP already has some data maybe about your customers, but you can enrich all of that data now onto your contacts, on your accounts, whatever it may be. And then you can use the omnichannel journey features, right? And I think that's really where CDP really shines. So just a single use case from somebody at Webflow, Federico. Effectively, he was trying to do this. He has product-led growth data. He's a growth engineer, and he has a definition of user activation. They want to create what we would call a synthetic event, and they want to sync that into Segment, right? So they have the data streaming in, they model it, they have some logic, they now have like a fact about their customer, and they would like to sync that into their tooling. Right now, it sounds like, daily cron job. They have a custom code solution that they've done internally. They have to manage that, maintain it. Something might change at the e-pile layer. Something might change the logic, and it's harder to update. So they would like to replace that with a pipeline from Census. So just a really simple, singular example of what we talked about, and kind of also highlighting the importance of the data warehouse and the modern data stack architecture. And that's it. Thanks for listening. It's time for questions.
Yeah, there were some good questions in the chat if you want me to pull some out. So locking considerations go much further than just where your data is stored, right?
Yes. So there's two elements here. There's where your data is stored, and then there's which vendors do you want to actually use for different things, right? If all of your data, like I'll just talk about treasure data since it's my old company and I'm still friends with them, I feel comfortable doing it. Yeah, if you go into treasure data and you have all your data in treasure data, then you're kind of wedded to the tooling that is based off of the data being in treasure data, right? So if you want to use something else, just let's say for lookalike management or audience creation or whatever singular feature of the many features marketers need, you're a little bit locked in. So there's a capability lock-in, and there also might be some data lock-in based off of that. That's why, again, generally, like if you have it off the warehouse, it doesn't really matter. You can use the tool that best suits your needs for what you're trying to do. Parker, any other questions?
Yeah, so another one from Manish, if I said that correctly. So your conclusion is that using reverse ETL and CDP is the right way to go?
Yes, Manish. The correct way, the way I did it at New Relic worked nicely, right? So we had Segment. It was a uniform tracking layer across all mobile and web and product. That was the event analytics source of truth, right? For both real customer events and synthetic events. So that is, that, and there's a lot of nice features that they built because event analytics is really where they shine. Snowplow is also another great alternative for this if you want to do it through a first-party data cookie. So that's your events. Everything else are your objects, right? There might be events from your business systems, but those are like maybe internal events, not events that relate to your customer experience. So yes, I would say like this is a crawl, walk, run. You have to do some of those first things. You have to like find out where all your data is, put it all in the warehouse, at least have one or two, I would say two people working on this. A SQL analyst and a data engineer. If you're lucky enough to find a unicorn analytics engineer, more power to you. And then you would really start to be leveraging this properly, and then have the CDP reverse ETL conversation. So there's a crawl, walk, run here. And yeah, you need to get those building blocks in place before you just start, guns blazing, trying to figure out where to send all your data. Data needs to be centralized and managed.
Okay, and we got a fun question from Andrew. He wants to know, do you expect all cloud CDP vendors to soon pivot to the same model? I think by same model, he's saying reverse ETL.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have a shiny ball. But I will tell you what I know. I know that companies like Snowflake view the future as everything being run off the warehouse. I'll say that. So I think a warehouse, if the warehouse is not a first a P0, let's say, part of your strategy, I think that will continue to bend in that direction. Yeah, I think that answers my perspective.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Okay. Ankush, what is the coolest thing you have ever seen done with reverse ETL?
It's kind of a cheat because it's on the screen right now. I think the sync a swag thing and the fact that you write a SQL query and you get a shirt is the coolest thing. That's just me being honest. I'm not even trying to marketing plug. I just think that's cool. In a more serious note, so we didn't have this at New Relic. This category didn't exist at New Relic, and so one of my partners is Niels Focht. He's at Trade.io now. He had to list a category didn't exist, but it's a very similar kind of need. We had chicken wire and duct tape running this kind of process before this category existed. So we had a Periscope data chart that was exposed as a CSV API endpoint that was picked up by Trey, that was written for tries and failure logic into a Google sheet that then, like for recording and observability purposes. And then the main purpose of this workflow was a tag untag job into Intercom to tag the customer lifecycle stage of users, which would then trigger various Intercom campaigns based off of trial, trial, purchase, post-purchase, and then renewal. This was mainly to serve the 10,000 accounts and like 150,000 users that were sub 10K customers of New Relic back in like 2017. That was probably if we had had reverse ETL in 2017, it would have been the perfect use case of, we've got a bunch of customer and product data and I want to manage my cohorts in Intercom programmatically. Regardless of it not being a, elegant solution, and like it was chicken wire and duct tape, it worked really, really well. And it had a huge lift on conversion. So probably that, but in a more fun note, yeah, Sync a Swag is the coolest thing I've ever seen with reverse ETL.
Okay, and we just got another one. How does A/B testing play into this? CDPs are really effective for building large samples of randomized splits. What is the future of reverse ETL to solve these general A/B testing needs?
Sure. I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying, right? Is like, I don't see reverse ETL or even the concept that I said that's a North Star operational analytics. Like, I don't see us building everything CDP built, right? These companies have been around for like 10 years, right? This category is a year old, a year and a half. It's just going to take a lot of time and effort to rebuild everything CDP already built. That's why the better together logic, right? I think that optimizely, if you want to do website testing and sync in, your user and account data to define your cohorts for your A/B tests or your samples, those are great. And then, yeah, if a CDP already has these capabilities, then use them. Just get better data in there and get more data in there. I don't think it makes sense for this category to go around and try to copy the roadmap of another category. It doesn't make sense.
And I think that is it. I don't see any more questions. And Ankush, would you like to add anything else before we sign off?
I just have a couple plugs. I think I get to do that. So we'll be doing these more often. So I'm excited to see you all again for the next time. And I think we were talking about doing some product updates for the next webinar. So stay tuned, sign up if you like to our newsletter or whatever, so that you can get notified about that. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
And yes, James, the recording will be shared. I'll send it your way. Thank you, everybody.